Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey Mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo and hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. I hope you meant to click on this, and if you did, or even if you didn't mean to, you're going to enjoy yourself today because we're going to be talking vintage cards, and it's already February. I can't believe it. I'm just sitting here going, holy crap. This year is already feels like it's flying by. Strongsville will be here before I know it. Not Nashville. The National. It's like, yeah, it'll all be happening so fast. You know, over the years that I've been in this hobby, there's a couple things that I've really come to appreciate and realize, and that is you can't ever know everything about everything. There's always more to learn, and again, no matter how long I've been in this hobby, I'm always learning something, and I actually love that about the hobby. And the other part about it is you can never have enough good friends in the hobby. And there's a gentleman I'm going to have on today who really epitomizes both of those. He's become a friend over the last year or so, and he also has an amazing collection and a lot of insight. And I'm going to pick his brain a little bit today. I'll go ahead and bring him on now, and it's Rick, who is Rocket Rick J18 on YouTube. Rick, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, you bet. I mentioned I'm going to pick your brain here in a minute, but first, this is your first time on the show, and I want you to give a little history. You know, people can go to your channel and kind of obviously catch up on everything Rocket Rick that they want, but what's your brief, collecting history, collecting story? And then I want to hear you can dovetail that into how you got into YouTube.
Okay. Well, I have two distinct periods of collecting. One when I was a kid that lasted from 1959 to about 1969, more or less. In 1969, as you might imagine, that's when I first got a car and subsequently thereafter a girlfriend. And so those two things occupied my time and interest for a while.
Fair enough.
But in 1986, I went to a card show at a local Holiday Inn, and I bought a box of Topps baseball cards, just a regular, the current year. And I bought a 1960 Topps Mickey Mantle card, raw. No. I didn't even know what graded cards were. I don't even know if there were graded cards. I assume there were, but
very few. It was the beginnings of that world.
Yeah, I know I didn't have any, and so that and I just bought it because Mickey Mantle was my favorite player as a kid, and I played many hours of wiffle ball, imagining that I was in Yankee Stadium, and I taught myself to be a switch hitter in wiffle ball. And I just loved hitting home runs left-handed.
I bet.
It was a blast. So that's what kind of got me started again and I didn't really know what to collect, so I kind of had a shotgun approach. And I bought some vintage cards at local card shops and um, local shows, and I bought a lot of contemporary cards, and I have literally thousands of them. And I don't know what to do with them. I mean, they're in boxes. Most of them haven't seen the light of day in probably 30 or 35 years. A lot of junk wax, and I enjoyed them. I mean, I enjoyed opening them. I enjoyed buying them, but I do very little of that now. And so that's kind of how I got into collecting, and I very shortly into my collecting experience started collecting sets. Although I was interested in individual cards, and I bought a lot of vintage cards individually, but I bought a lot of contemporary sets, or what I'll call, sets that were out at that particular time. And I worked my way back in time, starting with, I think, 1986 and then 87. And then I went back and I picked up, 85 and 84 and 83 and so on, just back that way. Sometimes buying a whole set, sometimes putting a set together, sometimes both. Um, I think I have 3 complete 1987 Tops sets, but
I think there's enough 87 top sets out there for every American to have 3.
I think that there are, you know, so, that was, but I got, I said I was buying vintage cards at the time they were not vintage cards. They were the current year's offerings. And, but I didn't have any of those cards. Well, I had one. I had a 1972 Tops Willie Stargell card that my wife had found somewhere and gave to me. And, that was buying these vintage cards was what occupied my time and attention when I wasn't, putting together a current set or looking to buy one. And I got the Donruss and the Fleer, and then later on the Upper Deck and the Leaf, and all kinds of contemporary cards, but usually by buying a set. I didn't open too many more boxes after that initial rush. And let's see, as far as uh, my interest now, I'm mostly interested in vintage. I get a top set every year as a complete set, and I take it out and sort the cards and put them in a binder. So I have probably, I don't know, somewhere north of 100 complete sets in binders of one sort or another.
That's crazy.
Uh, I
Oh,
have
I have so many questions, but I'll wait. I'll let you
Okay.
finish, and then I'll start asking.
Well, you can start anytime because I'm not I don't have a pre-planned script for myself, so I'm kind of relying on you to keep things rolling. And if I wax too long on a particular subject, don't hesitate to say enough about that.
Fair enough.
How did I get on YouTube? Well, I was introduced to the golden age of cardboard. It was well before your 100th episode, and I started going back and watching existing videos that you'd already recorded. And every week I would, of course, listen to the new episode that just came out. And I was fascinated by all of the information that was out there and available on YouTube about vintage cards. And that got me interested in watching, getting on YouTube and watching uh, different things on YouTube, different people that collected vintage cards, and I just typed in vintage cards, and got a whole list of offerings, and they were all terrific. But I did that for about a year, just lurking, as I think is the term that we is used now, um, and then I gradually started commenting, and that was pretty good for a while. And my wife kept saying, well, why don't you make a video? And so one day in February last year, I worked up the courage to sit down in front of the camera and make a video. And I haven't watched it since then because it's just awful. And it's painful to watch. So, needless to say, I was not comfortable in front of the camera.
It's terrifying, I think, for
It
all of us to
Yeah,
start.
it is, and I just said, what the heck, I'm just gonna be myself, and hopefully I'll get better, and I hope that that's been the case. So, that's that's pretty it. I think that my wife is my YouTube muse, I think. She watches all my videos, and she suffered, last night through a 2-hour marathon live stream,
Oh
which
man.
just got away from us,
Yeah.
Uh, so that's where I am today.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad to know that finding Golden Age of Cardboard, this podcast was an inspiration for you, and
Yeah.
hopefully just in your collecting, you said it's taught you a lot. I hear that a lot from people that privately they'll send me a message. Hey, I've learned so much from your podcast. It's taken me down this rabbit hole and it's been wonderful and all these different things. Uh, Believe me, the success of this show is all about who's sitting in that chair, not about who's sitting in this chair, because I am blessed to know a lot of great people in this hobby and have made some connections that have allowed me to bring guests on that are incredibly knowledgeable. And what I want to pick your brain about, speaking of being a knowledgeable guest, this lifetime really of collecting sets that you've done. When you tell me I have 100+ sets in binders, I don't know whatever I'm working on this, and I think I've expressed this to people on the show that I'm kind of slowly working back. I had all the '80s sets from when I was a kid. I built them
Mhm.
myself, built broke boxes and built sets and multiple sets sometimes and whatever. And then I started just buying the factory sets, similar to what we
Mhm.
do now. I do the same thing you do,
Yep.
Rick. I buy one, sometimes two sets, because I started buying two because I figure why not buy two for twice the price to have one I can put in a binder and one I can keep in the sealed box, just in case that becomes some magical year of, oh my gosh, all these great players and whatnot. You really don't know yet in the current year if how that set's going to age, right?
Right.
If it's going to be classic or if it's going to be crap. You just don't know.
Mhm.
And so that's been my thought lately, the last couple of years. What I have struggled with is when I probably from about 80 backwards, I bought all the sets complete, and I would look for specifically on auction houses lots of, like I say lots, like a lot, like not a bunch of, but multiple sets in one lot, right?
Mhm.
And I've always found that you could do that much cheaper on a per set basis because a lot of people only want one of the there might be 6 years worth of sets, and most people aren't looking for all 6 years. I happen to be the guy that
Mhm.
was, and so I was able to buy them relatively cheap compared to if I would have bought them all individually. And so I worked my way back to 73 and I kind of stopped for a long time. 73 is my birth year.
Mhm.
So I just stopped. And I thought that's good enough, right? That was kind of my thought.
Mhm.
Then it turned into, well, when I wait a second, I'm collecting all these Hall of Famers of these um, vintage years, basically 50 Bowman to 80. And I thought, I really do, maybe I do want to get in the struggle where I was going, maybe I do want to do it. And the reason I hesitated a lot was, do I really need to buy a common card of some guy I don't know? And what's the
Mm-hmm.
point, right? What is the
Mm-hmm.
point? Why should I do that? And I got over that when I found I could buy the sets pretty cheap by buying them complete, or I would buy them and tell whoever owned it, hey, go ahead and pull. I bought my 65 set this way. Uh, dealer had it in a binder. I said, look, I have all the Hall of Famers. You can pull the Mantle, the Mays, the Clemente, the Koufax. I don't care. I don't need them. I have them. That took the set from this price way down, significantly lower to where on a per card basis, it started making sense.
Mm-hmm.
And still not inexpensive, but way better than, for me. I have a lot of projects, right? So I don't want to spend, as joyous as it might be over time, the grind of building a set card by card
Right.
just does not appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I get that it appeals to a lot of people and they love hunting for that perfect card to add to their set. Kudos to them. It's just not me. So I bought a complete 65 set. And Rick, what I did was it was in a binder already, which this
Mm-hmm.
is what got me down the binder road, by the way, is that set. I bought that set in a binder and it was glorious. We all know how awesome a set looks in a binder and flipping through the pages and all of that. What I did was I took all those spaces that they had pulled all the Hall of Famers out. I made scans of my slab,
Right.
ratioed it basically to the size of a card and stuck it in, printed it, cut it out, and stuck it in
Mm-hmm.
the slot so that I don't like the empty slots.
Right.
So I'm slowly the way I've described how I'm doing this now is I'll buy a near complete set or mostly complete set and okay, boom, 62 done, 71 done, and I'm piecing it together to try to complete this master project that you've almost completed, and that's having every Topps base card, flagship card that's ever been released. So my first question to you, after hearing kind of how I think, which might be very different from how other people think out there.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like we thought kind of similar. Like ideally, I'd just like to buy the set, but I'll put it together if I have to. But ideally, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have 100+ binders. How in God's green earth do you store that many binders? And is it a major? What's your hurdle? What's your big? Oh my gosh, this really sucks about set building.
Well, the binders that I have sort of fall into two categories. One is Topps and Bowman.
Okay.
And so I have 3 floor to ceiling bookshelves that are filled with binders. And I do them it just happens that a decade worth of binders fits on one of these shelves. So I have a shelf for 50s, a shelf for 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, zeros, 10s, 20s. Well, if you start with, 1952 Topps and you go to 2023 Topps, I mean, that's 72 cents. So
Do
that's how you
you
get to 100.
Right.
Um,
Were the shelves already custom, or were they already built in your house? You happen to have them, or did you custom?
no, they're just store bought, and I had bought a lot of bookshelves for books because I also have a lot of books, and these 3 that are, if you can kind of see back here in the top right hand, well, it'd be over my left shoulder. There's a door back there with a dog print on it. Just to the if you were facing that door, it'd be just to your left is where the corner is. That is where I have my baseball cards.
Okay.
And there's 3, like I said, there's 3 shelves there. Theoretically, they would hold 50 years worth of cards each. But obviously, I don't go back 50 years, although my 50s sets because they were smaller sets, I can also throw in a couple of other things. And so I have all of my Bowman sets there also because I can fit 48 through 55 Bowman in a few binders, and then the rest of the space is taken up with 52 through 59 tops. And they all fit on, they all fit together because, they're small sets. And when you get up to 660 cards plus 330 update cards, well, that now sets a little more, pound for pound challenging. So that's how it happens. It happens over time. I mean, it took 40, almost getting on now 50, almost 50 years now to collect them all. I didn't start out to be a set collector. I didn't start out to accumulate all these sets. It just happened over time. I mean, that's how it developed.
Do you, and I'm asking this not only for me, but hopefully other people that are either thinking about getting into the set building world or have toyed with it and given up because of whatever bad experience they had or just
Mhm.
storage challenges, etc. That's my biggest challenge is the storage challenge. My room here is already overflowing. I don't have room for 3 shelves as much as I would love to.
Mhm.
I could have room for 3 shelves. I'd have to get rid of something else, and that's just
Yeah.
it's not on the docket. But did you know there's? I have a master checklist of all the sets, and this includes 51 tops, which is some
Right.
people call that a set, some don't. I personally do. Tops put it out. It's cards, so there you
Yep.
go.
I have one of
46. You have 151 tops. I,
Yep.
I only have 7, so I'm not far out of the 104 cards that are in the set. But the
No,
grand total.
I didn't mean one card. I have one set, and
Oh, okay,
I have the red back set.
gotcha.
So,
I'm gonna try to get red and blue someday.
yeah,
But
I'd like to also.
46,781 base tops cards have been issued through 2023, and we're only 9 days away from 2024 Series One coming out.
Yep.
But that's a lot of cards, and
A lot of
especially a
cards.
lot of binders. Has it ever? Do you buy your binders in bulk? Do you buy your pages in bulk? How do you try to keep the cost per? Because that's another barrier for a lot of people is the cost to.
Mhm.
It costs maybe as much to, especially for the junk wax stuff. It costs as much to buy the binder and the pages as it does for the cards themselves. How do
Yeah.
you justify that? How do you deal with that? Do you
Well,
just
I do buy in bulk, but it's been over such a long period of time that, I don't really have uniform, which I'd love to have because I'm a little OCD. I don't have uniform binders because, company, I started out with Howard Sports Cards over in Ohio, somewhere over in Ohio. I forget the name of the town. And I used those binders for a long time, but I haven't seen them in a long time. So, I've just changed over the years to getting this particular manufacturer or another one. The sheets have changed over time and they're much better now than they were in 1986 when I started. So it's evolved, and it's just it's really hard to be consistent over a 50-year period. So
for
that,
sure?
that's one of the biggest issues, and I don't worry about that. It's we talk about Frankenstein slabs. Well, I have Frankenstein binders.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
just it is what it is.
And I do too, and it bothers me a lot. But
Mhm.
I'm also like, God, do I really want to spend X dollars? You know,
No,
geez, Mikey has the
yeah,
best binders to me. They're all the
I
same,
I agree.
and it looks. I get why he likes. I'm like, that's how I gravitate towards that look.
Absolutely.
And yet, I know I've looked those binders up. They're like baseball themed binders for those of you
Yeah,
guys who don't know out there. They have a looks like you know, God, what am I thinking of on a
looks like a
baseball?
baseball.
It does look like a baseball
Yeah.
on the front, and they're all consistent and they're really cool.
Yep.
But they're expensive. They're even if you buy a bunch at a time, they're $15 to $20 per. Imagine
Hmm.
having to do that for 100 sets. You'd be like, nah, I'm good. Unless you hit the lottery, then you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
most of us have a budget, and it's like, oh, or I think I could buy a lot of cards with that money to buy
Uh,
this storage stuff.
exactly.
And if you have, where I land on it usually is, I've got the binders I have are fine. They're not
Yeah.
messed up. They're not broken.
Right.
It's just going to be what it is. I'm going to have some that are maroon colored, some that are blue, some that are black.
Yep.
I wish
Yep.
I could be the same. I do when Ultra Pro, for example, I'm on their subscription list for sales. And
Hmm.
so I'll get those and I'll go buy a whole case, even though I don't need them right this second. I'm like, well,
Yep.
if they're $6 a piece, I'll buy a case just to have them ready to go for when I
Right.
get my next set. So
That's exactly what I do.
yeah, I take advantage of these opportunity. I'm not in a hurry. That's
Right.
another. I think if you were to give a piece of advice, you would probably echo that. Don't be in a hurry, right? Like you said, it took you 50 years.
Yeah.
You could go do it right now if you had enough money, but just
Sure.
be patient with it. Again, I buy these binders not knowing when I'm going to get the sets or when I'm going to pull them out of the box and actually put them
Yeah.
in the binder. So I'm just being patient. But
You know,
you agree?
I do. It's first of all, you're doing this because you like it. It's fun. If it started to be a drudge, you'd stop doing it, I
Right.
think. I mean,
I would think.
I don't feel compelled to continue to collect cards because you know, I've been doing it for a long time. I just like doing it. I
Yeah.
still like it, you know. And it's a great thrill for me to finish a set because usually it takes a couple of years. And that's how I did the vintage. I just went back 1 year at a time, and I usually would start out by buying the Mantle card. Now, the only one I didn't buy was, the obvious one. I don't have a 52 Topps Mickey Mantle card, and I may never have one, but, if I don't, it won't be for lack of interest.
Fair enough. What is some
But
advice if somebody's out there thinking about building sets? What's some advice that, given your experience, you would tell them?
Mhm. Well, it I think you put your finger on it. It's pa be patient. You're not gonna Rome wasn't built in a day, your collection wasn't built in a day. Even if your style is to do X, Y, and Z, that can change over time. But I've always gotten a thrill out of collecting a set, and, I think the advice that I would give is if you're interested, try to, take advantage of whatever bargains you can come across. I'm not a slave to the grade of the card, and I don't, it's more important for me to have an example, even if that example, is missing a corner or is cut in half. Um, and I use my, uh, 59 Fleer, uh, card number 68 as an example of that. Mine is literally in 2 pieces.
Oh wow.
But, it just so happens, and I don't know how it got this way, but you can kind of gently push one edge against the other, and it'll stick. And so I somehow or another, once I got it in a penny sleeve like that, and then I put that in the binder, and I haven't touched it since then because I know what'll happen. But, I got a card that, in any sort of decent condition would have been $1,000 card, and, I got it for less than 100. Well, if you're
It was
collecting
too
every
hard.
card, you gotta take advantage of those opportunities, I think.
I think that's another piece of advice that people should take is we can't buy every card in perfect condition. You're gonna unless again you're super uber rich. Most of us are. I'll take what I can get, and I will build a set. You can always upgrade later. That's kind of what I tell
Sure.
people. And buying in lots is a great way to buying chunks of the set as you if you have opportunities to do that is great. And where I would tell people to start is start with a year that you really like. If you don't know if
Right.
you're going to like set collecting, start in a year that you really like first, and then okay, I enjoyed that, I didn't enjoy it, whatever your experience ends up
Mhm.
ultimately being, and then do the next one. Or
Right.
okay, I'm going to sell that set because I realize I don't want to do this. Uh, you'll get there quickly, right?
Yes. I used to have a sheet that had it was just a sheet of numbers. And I would use that, I would circle a number whenever I got the card that corresponded to that. And that was good for a while. Um, but it got kind of bulky after a bit too. So that wasn't a good permanent solution. So now I take either 4x6 or 3x5 cards, depending on what I happen to have. And I do this with them. I write all the numbers of the cards I don't have, or maybe all of the numbers. And then if I order one on eBay, I usually circle that number. And then when it comes in, I cross it out.
Gotcha.
Now, if I buy it at a show, of course, I don't have any delay between when it's purchased and paid for and when I actually get physical possession of it. So you see a lot of things on there that just have an X on them. And then if it's a superstar, sometimes I write the name in so I can get an idea about uh, how many big cards I have yet to get. This happens to be 52 tops. This particular, so you can see on the back sides where I have all the high numbers,
Yeah.
and I don't actually have anything checked off back there. Uh, Now I haven't gotten any high numbers yet.
Yeah.
So that's that, and I keep them stuffed in the pages of this Beckett Guide number 10,
Oh my
which is
God.
my Bible, so to speak, for baseball card collecting. Um, and last year at the get together, I got Dr. Beckett to sign it.
Of
So
course.
that was really cool. He was so pleasant and so accommodating. I really enjoyed meeting him, and um, so I don't know how many opportunities he gets to autograph you know a I think that goes back to 1988. So 35-year
I
edition of his price guide.
I owned that price guide at one point.
I'm
For
sure. Yeah,
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
us did. Yeah, he's great about. I bet he enjoyed seeing that and seeing how much you've used it and had it in your collection
Yeah.
for.
The other thing that I do is this is my checklist. Uh, so I this is just a page from the 1962 top set, and it's got these convenient little boxes on there. You can I guess you could check them, but I just fill them in. I'm a practiced test uniform test taker, so
There you
you got to fill in the square.
go. Yeah.
Not
What
just
was
make.
the hardest set for you to complete? Maybe the most frustrating that you've now completed that you're done with? What's been
Mm. Well, probably the hardest set to collect. They're getting harder because the cards are getting more expensive. But the last set that I completed in this run of Topps and Bowman was the 49 Bowman set, and the last card was Satchel Paige. So that took about a year from the moment that I said, I'm going to try to get this set. And at the 22 National, I bought Roy Campanella and Yogi Berra at the same time from Kit Young Cards. And I mention his name specifically because when I started buying cards from Kit Young, he was still in Vancouver, Washington. So he has moved personally twice since then. His card business is still in San Diego, but he lives in Hawaii. And although I had met him a couple of times at nationals or big card shows, and certainly had transacted a lot of business through the mail, a lot of it was pre-eBay. And so then you'd have that card, and I just Xerox the card and send it into, one of his staff and say, just uh, start sending me cards every, so often. And they would check with me and say, "Are you ready for some more?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And he said, "How much you want to spend?" And I'd tell him, and then they would pick out the cards from my list and send them to me, and I'd pay for them, of course, give them a credit card number. And that's how I got a lot of cards in the days before eBay. And not just Kit Young, but if my wife said, "What do you want for Christmas?" I'd say, "Well, how about get me a baseball card?" And I said, "Well, how do I do that?" Well, I'd Xerox that card, the 3x5 card, and I'd give that to her. So just get anything on here. If you call Kit Young Cards, somebody will answer the phone and they'll go pull cards based on, whatever you tell them, how much you want to spend. If you don't want to identify individual cards, just send them a copy of that and then tell them how much you want to spend.
That's
And
great.
so she would do that, and I tried to make it easy for her, but she may have bought more cards from Kit Young than I have over the years.
Uh,
Uh,
what else did I want to ask you? So 49 Bowman, you obviously
yeah,
you've completed that set, so you have the
yep,
Jackie.
yes, I had the Jackie already. It's not in pristine condition by any means. It's got creases, it's got corner wear, but it still looks good. And uh, the satchel I got at the National last year in Chicago, and I actually did my first card trade. My general collecting philosophy is if I ever had it, I've still got it. And so I broke with that tradition at the National last year, and I found a dealer who had a satchel. It was in better condition than I was prepared to buy. I think I believe it's a 4, a SGC 4, and I traded a Michael Jordan, what I'll call his rookie card, even though it's really his third year card. Uh, and I had it graded at the National because the dealer that I was working with, um, he he was interested in trading. He said, I would try to work something out with you, but can you get it graded?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it right here, right here at the National." And I went through the process and paid the extra to get it delivered then. And I made a trade. Now it came back a 7, So I had to put a little cash with it too, but that was all right. I ended up, I think, giving him 500 in cash, and his price for the satchel that he had marked on his card was $3,400. Well, I've never paid anything close to that for a card. I
Right.
didn't pay that much for my 51 Bowman Mantle. Uh, but I had to try something different, try something new, and so this year I'm going to take a stack of relatively lower grade cards that are duplicates, and I had a bunch of them graded in January from SGC, and I'm going to take those, and hopefully I'll get a few more graded before going, so I'll have some you know stuff to offer and maybe enough to make a down payment on something that I'd like to get, like I'm interested in getting a Ty Cobb card. And
Pre-war now.
although they're not rare, they are very expensive.
Are
So
you
that
so you're going to the National? Are you going to Strongsville in
yes,
April?
I am.
Nice. I'll get to shake your hand again.
I actually live about I'd say less than 200 miles from Strongsville,
Okay. So kind of right around the corner.
just up the interstate.
There you go. Is there a set for you, Rick, that you haven't started at all that's on your radar to start in the future?
Well, I have started a couple, and I I guess I get the play ball cards. I've been interested in a long time, and I do have a 39 play ball set. I don't have very many 41 play ball cards, and although that's not a very big set, it's got some big boy cards in it for sure.
Yeah.
So that's on my radar. I did acquire one of those cards. I do have the Ted Williams, or the Joe DiMaggio rather. I don't have the Ted Williams. Um, I'm working on the 40 set. I haven't really started working on the 41 set, so that one's on my radar.
Little known fact about me, I like the 40 play ball better than the 41.
Well, it has a lot of really neat cards in it, including a Joe Jackson, which
Yeah.
obviously not playing days, but still,
Yeah, the
pretty cool.
41 by and large is just a repeat of the 40, colorized and
Yep,
only current players.
right.
It's got it's got Pee Wee Reese's rookie in the 41, which is cool, but the 40 play ball has almost half the set is retired greats.
Yep,
And
yep,
fortunately, it's missing. If it had Cobb and Ruth and Gehrig, it would be a monster set. And
yep.
it has Wagner and Mathewson and Walter
Mhm.
Johnson and all the nicknames, Walter Big Train Johnson, right?
Yeah,
And they're actual black and white photographs instead of being colorized images. Uh, so I'd rather have the black and white. I mean, I just like them better. I like the way they look.
yeah.
And so I have that whole Hall of Fame run done. I don't have the Jackson, the Shoeless Joe card, but all the other ones, the DiMaggio and the
Yeah.
Williams and the Jimmy Fox and Mel Ott and all those guys.
Mhm.
And I love having those. And I have them in a myriad of grades from
Yeah,
1 MK to 6, you know.
sure.
And I bought them when they've always been thought of as the, kind of ugly stepsister of 41 play ball.
Mhm.
And I never got it. I always liked the 40. I like the 41 play ball too. So it's not like I'm saying they're terrible cards. I love them. And it's funny because I don't have the DiMaggio in 41. I do have the Williams and the Fox and the Pee Wee Reese, but I don't have the DiMaggio, and I want to get the DiMaggio.
Mhm.
Because
Yep.
what a great year, right? I mean, 41, you had 56, right? And
Yeah.
406, and there's some pretty monstrous baseball historic numbers associated with
Sure are.
1931. And so I get it, but that's cool that you're doing the 40 play ball or kind of start
Yeah.
rolling with that. It's a good one.
So I don't, obviously, I'll never have a complete set of T206s. I probably will never have I never will have a complete set of 33 Gaudis. But, I am working on a 35 Gaudi set, which I think is achievable. It's not nearly as many cards, and uh, although they're all the Rus and the Gehrigs are all comma cards now. They're low comma cards. They're not a lot of zeros after them like there are in the 33 Gaudi set.
The
So I
30
think it's
are
a
all the
doable.
35s 4-in-1s.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Because I have the Ruth from that set, but I don't have.
Yeah. There's two Ruths.
Yeah, I have
They're
Braves Ruth.
identical except for the number.
Oh, okay, I have mine's with Rabbit Moranville, and
Mhm.
I can't remember the other two guys, but um, and mine's a 2.5 or something. Very low grade, but glad to own it. It's the only
Yeah.
one. That's a cool set. Yeah,
I love
33. Sorry, 33, 34 Gaudis have gotten incredibly popular.
Yes.
And when I mean popular, that translates into expensive
Yep.
because literally just a few years ago, you could buy any of the four Roos for a couple grand. And now you can't find any of them in any kind of condition for really under 8 to 10 grand. And that,
Yeah, I remember seeing the Babe Ruths from the 33 Gaudi set at prices like $650.
yeah.
And
Oh, what we could have done.
I always thought, well, I'd like to have one, but I'm not collecting that set. And instead of buying that, I'd buy the Hank Aaron rookie card or something, something that was in a set that I was collecting.
Yeah,
So I guess I can't say that I missed out. Because if I'd have bought that Ruth card, I wouldn't have something else that probably went up just as much.
sure. Well, awesome. We were going to do, guys, we were going to do a little where Rick picked my brain a little bit, but I've wasted all of our time. I've used all the time picking
Yeah,
Rick's brain and asking him questions.
it
And that,
really went by so fast.
well, that just means you're going to have to come back on a future episode and we can have another discussion. But Rick, I appreciate your experience in the hobby. I appreciate your wisdom that you bring to this topic, and your experience is valuable. And I hope everybody out there got something out of this. Any final words before we close this sucker down?
Well, if you're interested in collecting sets, you have to have you're a marathon runner,
Yeah.
and you gotta have that approach. You're not going to run the whole race in the first 10 minutes.
So build up your stamina, get out
Yep.
there, and I would say just start. But if you want to check out Rick, he's Rocket Rick J18 on YouTube. I will put a link in this video if you're watching on YouTube in the description to go check out Rick's channel and just watch him talk about his collection. It's what we all do here. So
I,
Rick,
I'm
go ahead.
I'm trying to work through, all those sets and to show them, and I'm up to 1955 Bowman. I'm doing them year by year. So I
Nice.
started with a 39 play ball, and that's how far I've gotten in a year.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, Rick. I appreciate you. And thanks everybody out there, as always, for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys soon next week, as a matter of fact, for another episode. Keep collecting.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
You bet.